There are lots of really big topics in UX that warrant having a longer video, having a longer nuanced discussion. And one of these big topics is a buzzword that has gotten quite popular over the last few years, which is democratization in UX. So I'm curious what you all think of this term. What is it? And how would you even define democratization in this case?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Therese, and certainly one that is coming up more and more in our field of user experience. And by definition, the phrase democratization means making something much more accessible to everyone. And I think a lot of the contention, a lot of the confusion around this concept of democratization of UX stems from just misaligned definitions or misaligned levels of specificity on what it actually is that we're making more accessible to everyone and who that everyone really is and why.
Yeah, democratization, I think you're right, Anna. It does kind of lend itself towards this feeling of contention when it is talked about. And I think you're right. It's important to understand the definition to mitigate that. I believe making design and making the methods that we really believe in, our research methods, more accessible is high level a great thing. It doesn't mean giving away the toolkits and believing just anybody can do what we do, but helping people become aware of those things and see firsthand the value in those things. And maybe, yes, giving them some of the tools themselves when we can't be there to help them with that type of thinking. I mean, does lead to benefit when done responsibly.
I think that's really key because I think that there is an appropriate amount of fear in the idea of letting or even advocating for other people in our organization who are not trained in our craft to potentially think that they can do our craft and it not be to the degree that we want it to be done. And so I think that the contention around this idea comes from fear, right? And I think if you look beyond that at the greater good, there are certainly a lot of occasions where that may occur, where someone may overstep, think they can then do UX, and then in that idea, minimizing what our contribution is.
The fear's warranted, I think, in some situations.
Yeah.
Let's not hide from that.
Certainly.
But you're right, Sarah. I think when there's excitement and openness, like that's a big thing we can use to our advantage. And it's like, I kind of think of the analogy like, even if we have a first aid kit at home, we don't think we're doctors, right? It doesn't stop us from going to doctors for medical conditions, but we can arm ourselves with general knowledge to take care of ourselves better and apply healthy thinking to our own lives.
Absolutely, Kate. I think I like to think of this as there's exposure to research and design versus experience in research and design. So I recall a time actually where a product team I was working on, we had conducted some multi-day usability testing of our shopping cart and checkout flow. On day 2 or 3 of this kind of week-long usability testing, I had someone from outside of the user experience team ask if they could lead the next session. And even though that person had been observing all week, it really does take a strong UX professional to say, I respect your interest, but given our investment in this research, like we're going to make sure that someone who's trained in this part of our craft, make sure that they're leading that. But maybe that's something that we add to our list of priorities to kind of help train and upskill others on certain methods like qualitative testing for those moments when maybe there isn't quite enough UX capacity to help each and every product team through a certain method.
Yeah, this conversation is really fascinating to me because it seems like what is considered democratized is pretty important. Like, what is it exactly we're democratizing? Is it a task that we're democratizing, or is it data? Is it knowledge and accessibility to what we've learned?
Where's the line, right? To go back to the first aid kit, the first aid kit has Band-Aids, not stitches and sutures, right? So there is a line, and like Anna mentioned, I think qualitative testing is a great example. That's a method that with training and education, people can start to do some for themselves.
I think even, if you start thinking about democratizing user experience in your own organization, you have to scope that appropriately. And democratization isn't going to be something that all of a sudden solves all of your user experience, resourcing challenges where maybe you can't get all of the research done that you want to, or you don't have enough individuals to lead the design process. Even if you start to think about what that democratization can look like, and responsibly training other people, providing templates so that good, sound research can happen, there's likely still going to be many times where those individuals trying to kind of self-serve say, this is really complex. I need the help of a
Right.
trained user experience professional. So I think the scope of the democratization is really important.
Yeah, on that topic, it sounds like there's a really good case for democratization when you do have resource challenges. So my next question is, should everyone care about democratization? Like, what if you don't have resource challenges? Is there still a value to doing it?
My immediate response is yes, there's always value to having people participate and have knowledge of your work. If anything, it just gains you more respect. And so I think even if you're not facing resource issues, the idea of making our expertise and different types of responsibilities and methods accessible. Now, I don't think that means that we assign everyone something to do, but at least accessible, that people can come to the table and participate, should be on everyone's radar.
One way I think that plays out is, and this gets back to your question about what are we democratizing, is thinking about tools like research repositories, democratization of knowledge. When is that a bad thing? I don't think it is. Making that knowledge available to people so that they can act on it in situations where we can't be there first person. Because really, we're in situations most of the time as UXers where there's never going to be enough of us to go around, right? And so we might have teams that will come to us when it's feasible, reasonable, and I think it's always valuable, but involve us in their processes. But if we can't be there due to whatever kind of constraints organizationally we face, we can still do what we can to provide that knowledge and those resources to people so that they can act with that in mind.
To play devil's advocate, I'm interested though. Is knowledge for other people ever a bad thing? Well, what if it's used against you? So what if you're advocating for something and you've made this research repository available and someone is using that knowledge to counter your expertise and your executive decision? And I think I'm genuinely curious.
I think that's, go ahead, Kate.
I always think democratization isn't the answer, and it has to be accompanied by other due diligence and responsibility to educate people on the resources, the tools, the data, the knowledge, whatever it is that you're sharing. And so a situation where a research repository or any other kind of toolkit is made available is not the end of the steps, right? We also have to make sure that we do what we can to educate people on how to use that information. We're doing the same tactics like helping folks engage with research so that they understand it and so that they can use it responsibly.
I think of it as kind of demystification a little bit versus overprotection or gatekeeping of the user experience craft. I think in some ways too, democratization, healthy democratization does require some level of UX maturity within an organization as well. We can't bring in lots of tools and templates and processes and standards for analysis and synthesis into an organization who maybe has never done any user experience work before.
So this gives me kind of two more questions that just popped in my head. Very thought-provoking. First is what democratization is, right? We've got the democratization of tasks, the democratization of information, but I'm also curious what it's not. Because I think, Anna, we were talking earlier about how democratization is sometimes misconstrued to be one thing versus another. So, or, otherwise that certain activities are seen as democratization when in fact it's not, it's just business as usual. So I'd love your thoughts on that topic. What is democratization not?
Yeah, I don't think that democratization necessarily means that untrained individuals are all of a sudden initiating and leading user experience research or user experience design. I think that really there is structure involved. And so democratization isn't just kind of a free-for-all for everyone to go start talking to users or asking them if a user, do you like a design? Well, would you use it? Right? We all know that this isn't sound research. These aren't the types of things that we're really getting from user research. So democratization is not just kind of opening our craft up or opening up what we do to any and everyone. It's making it much more open so that others can participate meaningfully in the process and get the value from the work that we do. And maybe that means they're helping a little bit along the way.
Democratization isn't a free-for-all. It's not an open invitation. It's not a watering down of our very real experience and craft that we provide and the value that we provide. But it's an invitation to apply a user-centered mindset to the decisions that you make. And we can play a role in helping people understand how to do that. Not do all of the things that we do, but put on that mindset and apply it.
I think having a goal for your democratization efforts is really important. I think trying to do it just for the sake of doing it certainly won't get you anywhere. And I think also potentially having misaligned goals. I think efficiency is a really kind of great idea or goal. I think that having more respect and buy-in into then what we present is a really good goal. So I think being really clear about what you're trying to achieve can help lead efforts and also not let kind of you diverge too far from this concept.
Absolutely. This is giving me some pause, and I think it's drawing me to this one final, somewhat hot topic question, which is, how do you know when you're gatekeeping versus how do you know when you're cheapening the craft? Which it seems like these are the two extremes maybe of democratization, which is that if you do it right, then you're able to preserve the craft, but also if you do it poorly, it might be seen as like, oh, we're just not letting others grow the field. So I'd love your thoughts on how do you balance these two things?
I think the beautiful thing about this being a spectrum is that if you're too far on either end, you're probably not in the right place. Right? So if you feel like you're completely gatekeeping, you probably are, and you're probably too far on that end of the spectrum. If it feels like a circus and free-for-all and everyone is out doing their own UX methods and research and nothing's aligned, then you're a little too far over. And I think if you feel like you're in this gray space, then you're actually probably in the right place.
And I think too that it's not, watering down our craft, or it's not assuming to say that it's really easy and anyone can do it. That's certainly not what this is about, but it is about making sure that more people can start to see the value, hear the feedback our users have, see what they struggle with their own eyes, so that we can all make better informed decisions about how to improve the experience together.
Yeah, and I certainly see the value in this conversation as well. So thank you for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun, a lot to think about.
Thanks, Therese.
Thanks, Therese.